Good evening. Welcome to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. Tonight we have with us Charlie Grapski, who I will read his credits off to you. It'll take a little while. Bachelor's degree microbiology, Auburn University. Bachelor's philosophy, history, and political science from the University of Florida. Master's degree in political science, University of Florida. Master's degree in legal and political theory from University College of London. LLM in legal history and jurisprudence, again, University College of London. Law teacher certificate, again, University College of London. And is a doctoral candidate in politics at the University of Florida and in law at the University of College of London. LLM, have to ask you.
LLM actually means Master of Laws. LL is plural in Latin. And of course, the original study of law studied more than one form of law. It studied the civil law and it studied the canon law. And of course, now we also have civil versus common law, but that's what LLM stands for.
And how long exactly have you been interested in politics and law?
Well, probably for the second half of my life, I have taken an interest and a concern in both learning about it and trying to participate as a citizen. As a youth, the last thing I wanted to do was be involved in politics or law. My mother was a lawyer, and I remember as a child everyone would ask, so you're going to be a lawyer like your mother? And I would say, oh, absolutely not. I want to be a veterinarian.
A veterinarian.
That's what explains the microbiology, and that's where I started.
That's where you were. That's where you were in your life when all of a sudden politics, history, and law found their way into your life. Yeah,
and it actually makes sense. It might not seem so at first, but my original concern was education. I had gone on to, in fact, I had gone to school here in Connecticut. I went to Loomis Chaffee in high school.
And that's upstate?
It's in Windsor. Windsor. And I graduated high school a year early, expecting college to be this amazing educational experience with even more. And I got there, and I was quite disappointed with what was expected and what was being taught. So I started trying to figure out how do we go about fixing education. And I realized that education was dependent upon our political system. If we were going to fix it, the political system had to be utilized. It had to be incorporated in. So I began trying to get involved as a citizen and to begin to address those issues, only to learn. And whenever I take on any issue, I study it. I say, if I want to know something, I find out about it. And I began to learn that our educational system is not all that's broken, but our political system had been fundamentally corrupted from the ground up. And I started asking the questions of why, when, how, and what can we do about it. And so for the past 20 years of my life, I have spent quite a bit of that as a citizen and a scholar.
It's a nice combination, citizen, activist, and scholar. You've taken what you've learned and actually applied it outside of academia.
Yeah, I certainly have.
Okay, well, here's the question for you. What kind of government do we have here in the United States?
Well, that's a good question. Commonly you'll hear people say America is a democracy, and I certainly believe America should be a democracy and is meant to be a democracy. And then you'll hear a common retort back, well, no, America's not a democracy, it's a republic, as if these were two different things. So my answer would be to start, in theory, if we go back to the founding of the nation, we are both a republic and a democracy. The two terms are synonymous at that time. It's only at later times do we try to tear them apart and make one appear contrary to the other or fundamentally different from the other. And in practice, I would say we are realizing neither. And the two phrases that I would use, and I'll try and tie them together, is I would say that in practice we're more of an oligarchy.
Define oligarchy.
Give me 1 second, because
yes.
let me tell you the other term I'm going to use, and I'm going to show how I believe the two terms are also not synonymous, but one necessitates the other. We're an oligarchy and we are a party government. Now, to go back to oligarchy, because that's really the important thing. We have to really understand these words: democracy, republic, oligarchy, and where they come from. So what I always do with my students, and I do whenever I'm speaking about this, I say, let's go back to the beginning, and let's go back to Aristotle and the classical Greeks, the first democracy in the world. And Aristotle, of course, is writing at the decline of the Greek democracy, just as Cicero, who takes these theories and puts them back in, and this is where we get the word republic. Aristotle would never have used that. That was a Latin term. It comes much later. But as a synonym for democracy, Cicero used republic, and there are some differences, and we can get to that in a second. But he was writing at the decline of the Roman Republic. And they're writing political theory in order to understand what's gone wrong, to try and figure out how to make it right again. So let's start with Aristotle, because Aristotle, in all of his works, is very thorough. And he always starts off by classifying, and he starts off by giving the history of that area of thought. And it's Aristotle's classificatory scheme of forms of government, another word of which is constitution. It's not necessarily a piece of paper with something written on it. It is a form of government. And the history at the time of Aristotle in the study of governments and politics was that you had three forms of government possible, based upon the question of who rules.
Three.
If one person rules, you have a monarchy.
Monarchy, right.
Mono meaning one.
Yep.
At the other extreme, let's take it to the extreme, all people rule. That would be a democracy.
Democracy.
And in the middle, more than one, less than all, you would have an aristocracy. Now there's some other things to that, because aristocracy had a connotation of being good. Aristos meant the best. But for simplicity's sake, just think of it as three categories.
Yeah.
One, all, and something in between. And what Aristotle recognized is that this missed the point, right? Because people were saying democracy is the best form of government. No. Monarchy is the best form of government. Democracy is about freedom, and that's a good thing. Monarchy gives the wisdom of that one ruler, and that's a good thing.
And the comfort of people not having to make decisions for themselves.
And Aristotle would have argued that that is a very bad thing in itself. I mean, because if you're not an active participant as a citizen, and citizenry is really at the core of democracy, and it is at the core of Aristotle's theory, which is why I disagree with many people who look at Aristotle and say this is an anti-democratic theorist. I think they misread and misunderstand him, particularly looking back from how political theory advanced over time. But just to get back to it, what Aristotle said is, we don't start with the question of who rules, because you can have a good monarchy if you have a wise and benevolent monarch. But do you think that you're going to have that for all time? And what do we know from history? We know we have a wise and benevolent monarch, and hereditary transfer of government to his son brings the exact opposite.
Many people who have transferred wealth, whether it be financial wealth or philosophical wealth or historical wealth or educational wealth to their children, will attest to the fact that giving it to them does not always mean receiving it or putting it in